Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. It's on top of the hour now, and before we start, we have a few announcements to make before I hand over to the moderator. And the announcement is just about SAM 2020 online conference. We are excited to announce that the School of African Microfinance is holding a virtual conference from the 8th of September to 10th to address the impact of COVID-19 on the financial inclusion industry and to address sustainable strategies to secure business continuity. The conference includes 2 days of master classes. Our theme for the SAM 2020 online conference is the future of financial inclusion in Africa, post-COVID strategy for MFIs. We hope you can join us to gain fresh knowledge, skills, insight, and ideas to ensure your institutions thrive during this trying period. We shall be the flyer is already on the screen, and by the time we finish the program today, we shall be sharing with you links for the registration. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to our moderator to start the event of today. Thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Steve, for that. And thank you for announcing the SAM conference. It will be an exciting opportunity for all of us to get back together, regardless of having to meet the requirements of meeting without having to meet physically, the way we are always used to meeting in Mombasa. Today we have our third webinar, which is part of a series of webinars that we have been holding as the School of African Microfinance. And before then, I want to send my greetings to all of you participants who are with us today. I know for those from Nigeria, it is good morning. For Kenya and East Africa and even the Southern Africa, it is good afternoon. For those participants in parts of Asia, India, China, Pakistan, it is good evening. Kadry, thank you, one of our partners, because for you it is good morning and very, very early morning. So thank you that you're with us. You're all welcome. But before we start, let us set some ground rules. It is important that we observe some rules because we have only an hour and we want to make the most out of this hour. And one of the rules we would really ask you is that make sure that you mute your microphone. That way we eliminate background noise. And where you haven't muted, we'll ask our technical team to help you with that. We'll also ask that you write your questions in the chat box. That way we will have an opportunity to listen to our panelists, and we will also take a number of the questions, and those we cannot answer, we are going to get back to you. We are going to respond through the contacts that you have already provided for us. So like Dr. Steve has already mentioned, our SAM 2020 conference is going to be online, and we have said that it is going to be between 8th and 10th of September. Please diarize and make yourselves available because it will be a very exciting time. My name is Rosemary Kantai. I'll be moderating this session, and I'm the lead faculty for Savings Mobilization in the SAM conference. In this third series, we started off with the first webinar whereby we looked at risk management and we looked at disaster recovery and business continuity plans for microfinance institutions. Regardless of what is happening, we have said and we have emphasized in the past webinars that we are in a situation where we have never been before. The whole world is affected. We do not know the way forward. We only know that we have to survive. We have to make sure that we survive. So for our institutions, we must look at them and we know that as we get to the end, we know that this institution survives. It is not how much money we will have made, but our institutions are surviving. In the second webinar, we looked at post-COVID strategies for MFIs, and we focused on client management, we focused on marketing, and we focused on business development. A lot of information came from that. And in this third webinar now, we want to look at resource mobilization and opportunities in the rural economy for thriving in the COVID-19 environment. We have to start thinking of the positive. We cannot continue focusing on the negative. COVID is here. We cannot deny it, and therefore we must look at the positive. So in the midst of all this, we have our panelists who are with us, a team that is very highly skilled in microfinance and in development, and a team that really serves in some as taking various courses, and a team that works and has a lot of experience. Those who have attended some, you know that the team that comes there is a team that is very, very well versed in the area that we are focusing on. So join me in welcoming our panelists, even as I welcome all of you who have joined us. I know that it has taken your time. You have taken your time to just be with us for this hour. And as we welcome our panelists, I want to introduce them briefly. The first person that I want to introduce is Lucy Nguru. Lucy is our lead faculty in rural and agricultural finance, so the right person to have for this webinar. And she's also an experienced microfinance expert with a number of years, very many years, I don't want to say how many, experience in the microfinance sector and business development services. Currently, she is the principal consultant with Ultimate Limited, focusing on rural finance initiatives. Welcome, Lucy, and greet our participants. Dr. Steve, unmute Lucy. Lucy is muted, Dr. Steve.
Yes, that's what we are trying to do.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening everywhere. I'm glad to be in this webinar, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful engagement. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And the other panelist that I want to introduce is Kadry Furany. Kadry Furany is joining us all the way from Canada, and he is our lead faculty in reporting, financial analysis, and performance for MFIs. Kadry is the Vice President, International Operations, Care Canada. Welcome, Kadry.
Hello, everybody. I'm from Egypt, and I'm calling today from Canada, so in Ottawa. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. Pleasure to start the day with a discussion like this, and pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kadry. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Kadry. Yes, Kadry is from Egypt, so he's very much at home, even as we discuss these opportunities in our environment in Africa. Our next panelist is none other than our Dr. Steve, whom you have met, our course director. Dr. Steve, now formally greet the participants.
Thank you, Rosemary. Good morning and greetings from Nigeria.
Thank you very much. That is the lineup of our faculty team. You can see already the kind of diversity that we are having. I think as we move forward, when we are talking about opportunities in the rural economy, we have to always remember that we can't talk about the rural economy without talking about agriculture. And when we talk about agriculture, we also must think in terms of what puts food on our tables when we are on a daily basis. And that is why I want to come back to Lucy, and I want to put a question to Lucy. What opportunities are there for rural financing initiatives, even in the midst of this COVID challenge?
Lucy?
I'm back, and I want to believe that everyone had a meal today and looking forward to the next meal tomorrow. And with or without COVID, like Rosemary has said and my colleagues had said in the past, and especially for microfinance institutions, we must remain true to the fact that we are a strong tool of alleviating poverty. And therefore, as we think about the rural economies, I think dynamics are changing. Agriculture has been interrupted, not only with COVID, but there has been locusts, there has been other things, but that hasn't meant that there are no opportunities. And I want to go through it and say that in a very recent report by AGRA, September 2019, it stated that millions of smallholder farmers supply the SMEs with food, and that many of the African people eat food that has gone through maybe some value addition, some movement from one point to the other, and therefore the smallholder farmers still remain and will always remain very important to continue feeding the communities in Africa. And what has happened is that there has been a lot of initiative. The small and medium enterprises that are in food industry have put in a lot of effort in terms of enhancing the value chains. Some are already providing working capital. Others are providing it in terms of seeds and other inputs like fertilizers. They provide logistics. They also remain the biggest drive to market linkages. And therefore, the farmers who are producing this food, because there are many, we are told like almost 60% of the rural economy is agriculture. The biggest challenge has been access to capital. And that remains true even in this time of COVID. And therefore, the microfinance institutions, even as we sit and reflect on our way forward, one thing is for a fact that people will continue feeding. The food shortages are becoming a reality. In Egypt recently, they said, in Ethiopia and Egypt, they say that the food shortage is expected to be higher because the production system have been disrupted. The rural economy, the rural communities are also affected and are not able to do business as usual, so they may not produce as much food. So we'll need a lot of innovation in making sure that we support enterprises that are going to put food on the table. And I think in the rural communities, again, we are finding that there is now the urban-rural migration, some of the effects that we have had because of loss of jobs. There are people who are migrating back to the rural areas, and this will require settlement. Some may want to do asset improvement or even acquire a home to live in. There are also people who have remittances by the government. I know like some governments are not giving in-kind support. They're providing monies through the mobile monies. And these people will need a place to have to use the money so that they can be able to use it gradually. And I think recently in India, we saw that the kiosks, what we would call the small shops in the villages, became an avenue for food distribution. And therefore, if you're microfinance and that was your customer, there are many ways that you can encourage them to build up on innovative ways of weaving through this COVID season. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And thank you for sorry about that. I didn't know that I had been muted. I had assumed, I had left it on because I think I assumed that it was still on. One of the key things that Lucy has said is that there are still opportunities. For the microfinance sector, we are saying if there are opportunities, then we may need resources. So I want to come to Dr. Steve, because if there are opportunities and we need resources, one of the things that we have had and we have continuously known that when there is a crisis, one of the greatest assets that is affected is the revolving loan fund. And that is the biggest asset. The outstanding loan fund is the biggest asset for MFIs. So during this period, Dr. Steve, I would want to ask, now we are already at a point where we are saying that there are challenges for MFIs in Africa. So where can MFIs look for resources for them to be able to take advantage of the opportunities of COVID-19? And what local fundraising options exist for MFIs in Africa?
Thank you very much, Rosemary. We all know that even before COVID-19, the resource mobilization has been a major challenge of the MFIs. Money will naturally not be enough. And given the reality of COVID-19, the future is not what it used to be. As we have already had the challenge of resource mobilization before COVID-19, that time we were relying on client savings. And with the reality of COVID-19, the clients are recalling their money to feed. They are recalling their money for health services. And given this situation, most MFIs are now naked because they discover that loans are not coming back, the savings have been recalled immediately. And in this type of situation, the options are limited. I will give just two realistic options that MFIs will need to address immediately. And before we close, we are going to be sharing the strategy for additional resource mobilization. The first is that we must look inwards. We have to source funds locally. This is the time for MFIs in Africa to look within Africa. And I will give you a practical example here. The Nigerian Stock Exchange has just listed LAPO, Microfinance Bank, in a 6.2 billion naira bond last Monday. And this is about $40 million. And if in a difficult situation like COVID, LAPO raised $14 billion in the stock market, it shows that most MFIs, we can, with the right combination of leadership and active business process improvement, we can raise funds locally. We don't need to start looking outside Africa. There is a lot of money in Africa. And the unfortunate thing, or rather the fortunate thing with COVID-19 is that it is happening to all of us at the same time. It is affecting us in Africa, it's affecting us all over the world. So whichever country you want to run to, for them to give you resources, they will tell you we are all in it together. Secondly, we need to approach social investors within Africa who are willing to lend for impact. Most of the time we've been approaching commercial banks to lend, and this is not the time for commercial fund. This is the time for social impact fund. Government and philanthropic individuals are already giving palliatives to cushion the effect of COVID-19. It is time for us to now look at our government so that we can now position our MFIs and MFB to be able to be a vehicle for economic empowerment. It is not enough to give them a bag of rice today. It is enough to give them enough money so that they can launch themselves back into a business. Opportunities are emerging within the environment. MFIs will need funds to lend to clients, and we need to engage our stakeholders and build local resources. I will stop here, and when we continue, we'll now look at the major strategy. What must we put in place for these funders to believe in us? What must we do to make sure that our local resources in Africa, they are being channeled to develop our MFIs in Africa? Thank you very much, Rosemary.
Thank you very much, Dr. Steve. When you say there are resources and when you say there are opportunities, then you give us hope, because when you are faced with the kind of crisis that we have with the COVID, it is very easy for people to start focusing only on the negative and we start losing hope. So we are looking, as we look at these opportunities, we are aware that there are certain things that we must do around ourselves, even as institutions. There are certain systems that we must put in place. There is certain information that we must put in place. And in the process, then I would want to come to Kadry, because you are the one who, you being in the lead faculty in terms of performance for microfinance institutions. I would want to come back to you and ask the question. At all times, measuring performance for MFIs is critical. It doesn't matter, it is not only during the COVID times, even the best of times. And the management, the board, and the regulators are always interested in this information. So what tools or reports should we pay attention to now during this crisis of COVID? Kadry.
Thanks, Rose. That's a really good question. Thank you so much. Let us imagine it. I mean, you can't fly an airplane without an accurate dashboard in front of you. You can't do any sophisticated business without a clear dashboard of information for management to make decisions based on. Microfinance institutions are complex entities, and because of COVID, because of what is happening in the agriculture sector, because there are instruments for funding that Dr. Steve was talking about, we need to be more savvy in looking at the dashboard, or actually making sure that we have complete dashboard and able to understand what it's telling us, so that we can apply for the right source of funding so that we can invest in the right sector like agriculture and whatsoever. What we teach in SAM classes is basically the use, the building and the use of 3 key financial reports that cover the performance of the microfinance institutions from 3 different directions. I would say at minimum, we have to have these. It's basically 3 distinct groups of information presented in 3 distinct statements. And I'll try not to use accounting terms here. I mean, let us imagine it together. You have group of information or group of financial data that shows us the status of the organization right now in terms of what we own and what we owe. Now, if we are going to investors or market instruments, that what Dr. Steve was talking about, definitely people will need to look at this and see how healthy we are, what kind of reserves we have. This is the kind of statement that shows, for example, what assets do we own. We call it an accounting balance sheet, but I'd like to unpack these terms a little bit to make it easier for us to process. So basically, if I have agriculture loans, this is where I'm going to see the outstanding balance of those. If people are withdrawing savings to buy food, like what Dr. Steve and my friend Lucy said, then we're going to see it on the liability side that the people are withdrawing their savings. So the movement in the markets basically will be reflected in those statements. And we teach in class what affects what, so that when you see movement in one number, you relate it to actions in the field. So this is the first group. The second group, which basically focuses on revenues, income and expenses. And unlike businesses, unlike other entities, for microfinance institutions, we don't really, or we teach people not to really lump or add all the income together and all the expenses together and then come up with a bottom line. Actually, we unpack it into stages so that management will know exactly where the income is coming from and when it's going to. So, for example, you may have income like interest in loans. And then you have income like granted from someone. We don't mix those together because we want management to know exactly what is coming from the core business and what is coming from the goodwill or support from others. Through this approach of staging how we present the information in the statements, management can easily pick where the leakage is coming from, where are we efficient, where we are not efficient. Moving to the third one, and thanks God we have electronic monitoring and monitoring system now, the MISs, like we are able now with the software available in every microfinance institution, small or big, we are able to do an analysis for the portfolio. That's the last report, which is forensic analysis basically of the status of the outstanding portfolio we have and the savings that we have, unpacked into sectors so that we see how the agriculture sector is performing. And if we are investing in products in agriculture, we know where to put the money, which area, which branch, and whatsoever. This we call it portfolio report. And there are different pieces in it that's really critical in terms of laying out the portfolio in a way that management would understand, so that when we ask investors, when we design a new product, we embark on these initiatives with, I would say, solid information and make basically informed decisions. So with those 3 together, we would be able to seek investments or liquidate some assets in order to finance our portfolio, or to invest in agriculture portfolio or any other sector. The class, definitely in SAM, we spend the week doing this. There is lots of art involved. We unpack it well, and hopefully in SAM 2020, we'll be able to transform this content into digital or on camera instead of like being in class together. Thank you so much. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Kadry. And thank you that already we are seeing that there are things that we can do internally to start looking at what we have as our assets, and even some of the information that we need to package so that we can look for the resources. Before I go to the next question, there are several questions that are coming up on the chat box. And from what you have presented, Lucy, Rita from Amfu is asking, can you clarify on the innovative ways that an MFI can adopt? The question, I think, is on the innovative ways in the rural agriculture.
Thank you. I think a very good question, and I will tie it up with the past. In the panelists have insisted that in any business, you have to keep in touch with your customers. So if there's a time that the microfinance institutions need to know their customers, it is now. And again, we have with the homestay, we have a lot of time in our hands. I would urge the microfinance institution to step out of their comfortable box. Currently, many of them are not going into the field, but they can invest this time in ensuring that they get to engage more with their customers. Like Eva had said in the previous, and what we also explore a lot in the classroom, you will not provide a financial services if you do not know the needs of your customer. And therefore, this presents a situation for microfinances to be able to understand two things. One, the immediate response they can make to customers who are already having a good cash flow, because at the end of the day, we continue to finance them. We must also remember that there has to be viability in the business, but we have seen some businesses thriving, others going down. But unless you are very, very clear with your customers, then you wouldn't be able to know which customers to keep financing and the ones to keep encouraging. So I think in response to that, some of the innovative ways we can do, one, like the board has to look at the situation and agree on the products that they can continue financing, which means that they have to look at the overall risk that the institution continues to put itself in if they continue financing a certain sector. But like we have said, agriculture, even if there has been disruption, the production of food, movement of food, storage will continue to happen. And therefore, I would encourage, and I would say that if a microfinance needs to get into this sector, they need to make a decision, carry out their analysis, and be able to decide among their customers who are already playing in the value chain or who are already at a position to engage fruitfully with the small and medium enterprises who continue to provide food to the population in Africa. And they can look at the part of the value chain that they can do. Most of the smallholder farmers are in the production, but others also are playing in the distribution channel, either as transporters, storage, or even supplying labor that can be paid upon by the SMEs. And one of the ways is encouraging them to have contract farming that can have a tripartite relationship so that the microfinance institution is paid by the SME that is sourcing from the farmers. The other thing that they must do, this becomes a unique provision in that if you're then getting into agriculture, you must also think about the capacity of the farmers. The microfinance per se may not be able to provide the capacity building, but there are a lot of initiatives by governments all over Africa to support the smallholders, and many of them have been supported to get into cooperative of producer groups, and microfinance can peg into these and develop linkages and relationship. Some of the donors like USAID and IFAND have supported capacity building of smallholder farmers to ensure that they have the agronomist support and they are able to produce effectively. So therefore the microfinance can come in and provide the finance, but within the whole value chain so that they are looking at farmers who have a clear market linkage and opportunities that continue to thrive within this COVID season. And within our course, we are able to delve deeper into how you can look at your products because they are unique. Again, in the rural community, in the rural economy, people continue to live like in the cities. They will continue to invest in assets, even when there are crises. Right now, there are people who are investing. There are people who have come from the cities and are in the villages thinking, oh, my house doesn't look the way I would like it to look, and they are doing some home improvement. Others could be doing transfer to their needed people. So you have to look at the whole basket of the financial services that can be given to the people in the rural economy. And finally, I would want to say that the microfinance institutions should use this moment to make sure that they step out of the comfortable zone. In the past, we knew that the micro entrepreneurs are risky and banks didn't look at them at all. But microfinance stepped in their way, and through financing them, they become credible, and banks are now downgrading to be able to serve the very customer that they thought in the past was not viable. And I would take the challenge and say, agriculture has been seen as a very risky venture to invest in. But I think if factors are worked in, proper assessments are done, and very close contact with the customers, it is possible that we would prove it as a success. And it's time that microfinance institutions steps in this window, use the time they have now in-house to ask their officers to do value chain analysis, ask them to be very innovative in how they can keep going on with their customers who are in the rural economy. Thank you very much, Rosemary.
Thank you, Lucy, for that in-depth analysis of what opportunities are available. And I'm noticing that we have very many questions that are coming up, Dr. Steve, in terms of resource mobilization. So instead of first of all going specifically to those questions, I want to first of all go directly to the questions that we have because you might actually cover them. And the first question that I would want to ask you is, are there examples in Africa of MFIs who have really been pushed, you know, that push until they are the last bit, and they have emerged financially stronger and sustainable to cope even with clients' requests? How did they do it? And then what are these social investors that we are talking about? And what are they doing for microfinance at this point in time? So Dr. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Rosemary. And I will just continue from where Lucy stopped. Quite a number of questions have come up in the chat box. Florence, Alex, and Rita, they are asking, where are the social investors? Just like the moderator is talking about. There are many social investors in Nigeria, and that is why in SAM 2020, we have a masterclass on resource mobilization. Some of these details of these investors may not be shared on this platform because we need to go deeper and deeper in linking, in SAM linking the institutions with the social investors that are ready to support MFIs across Africa. Florence was asking about the issue of regulation. Regulation is not a hindrance to social investors investing in microfinance. And because Florence is talking from the perspective of the Central Bank of Nigeria, what the Central Bank of Nigeria is asking is transparency. You need to declare it. You need to be open. And that is what Kadry was talking about. When you get money from social investor or you get donation, it must be reflected in your accounting, in your reporting, and you need to be able to show it very well. So coming to the question of the MFIs that have been able to push to the brink, the International Labour Organization is doing a fantastic job in Nigeria and Sierra Leone. Ebola experience taught Sierra Leone a bitter lesson. Microfinance went down, down, down in Sierra Leone during Ebola. But with the support of the International Labour Organization, specifically, Apex Bank of Sierra Leone was able to come out stronger and better with many branches. Before Ebola, Apex Bank of Sierra Leone was sitting in Freetown, expecting the clients to come and meet them. But with Ebola, they have to move. They have to have many branches and cover all the districts and be able to work more. The same thing with LAPO. LAPO Sierra Leone was able to deepen financial services and reach out to more people in the area. And I will crave the indulgence of the moderator to share with you a few slides that we have on this deepening financial inclusion for within the sector which will guide us to be able to know what are the things we need to do. But as Kadry pointed out, quite a number of things are things that are within our reach that we must be able to do. We have tagged these few slides, Resource Mobilization Rescue Plan for MFIs in Africa. And looking at the resource mobilization for MFIs in Africa, a reality we must agree in this conversation is that resources are scarce and it will continue to be scarce. Whether we like it or not, we will not get enough money. Covid-19 has imposed additional pressures, and this pressure is facing everybody at the same time. And storms are the only constant feature of resource environment. Resources are getting dried up, people are spending their savings, nobody is investing. And in the worst case scenario, some people are thinking the world is coming to an end. In that situation, people will not save. So within the COVID-19 environment, what we need as MFI is to establish our storm breakers. What should be our storm breakers in this situation? We need responsibility to be taken by all the principal partners. Who are the partners? Creditors and investors. We need a heterogeneous mix of financial instruments as they work with MFIs to implement rescue plan. It is not every money you take. You need to be able to choose now. If somebody is offering you as an MFI a loan that the conditions are not acceptable and the conditions are not reasonable within the COVID-19 environment, you must reject it. You must be able to say, yes, this is our plan, this is our plan, this is where we want to deploy the money. MFIs and practitioners should be open to new ideas. What got us into 2020, whether we like it or not, will never move us into 2021 and beyond. The game has changed. And the earlier we accept the fact that the game has changed, the better for all of us. Regulators must review supervisory and compliance environment. The Central Bank of Nigeria is already leading in this area. For example, the Central Bank increased the capitalization of microfinance bank last year, and the banks were giving around March, April to recapitalize. But with COVID-19 catching us up in February, March, April, everybody was on lockdown. The Central Bank was receptive enough to shift the goalpost and say, we give you additional one year to recapitalize. So regulators across Africa must follow suit. They must be able to say, yes, we understand what you are going through. We sympathize with you. We are not ready to kill you as an institution, and we want you now to be able to structure your finances in such a way that you should do better. What are the things we must do? Medium-term debt rescheduling. Start talking to your creditors. Don't abandon them. Don't refuse to take their phone calls. Tell them that, yes, we are owing them. And talk to them and let them understand that you need grace period sufficient for medical crisis to abate. People are saving money for medical emergencies. The hospitals are overwhelmed, even in advanced countries like America. Kadry will tell you the pressure medical facilities are going through in Canada. Africa, that we have a major crisis of health, is there. So we cannot pretend that everybody is on his own. Government cannot take care of us. We must take care of ourselves. Debt rescheduling as necessary with the use of diverse instruments, such as subordinated debt, debt equity swap. When we were working with the ITC-ILO, at the beginning, making microfinance work, we said rescheduling was a recipe for disaster. Now we discovered that rescheduling is the only thing that can save microfinance bank, because the clients are not opening, the business premises are not opening. And if we don't reschedule, we will be deceiving ourselves that these clients are owing such a huge amount of money, which they cannot repay. We need new equity and fresh working capital. During crisis, experience has shown that fresh or new money is difficult to obtain, but it is always critical to sound a resolution and get the board and other people to be able to come to the table. And this is the strategy we are putting in place and recommending, resource mobilization turnaround. Number one, you must evaluate your MFI situation. Kadry has already dealt on this extensively in financial reporting. Tell yourself the truth. Don't deceive yourself. We are all in it together. Even if you tell me you are doing well, I know, except you are from the moon, that COVID is not affecting you. It is affecting all of us. Then you need to install strict management controls. Don't pretend that everything is okay. You need to control your staff. You need to control your stakeholders. You need to engage with them and tell them that, yes, this is a reality. We have a crisis in our hand, but we are addressing it. Then number three, assess the existing core staff and resource channel. Where are you leaking? Where are you bleeding? Where can you save money? Staff are not coming to work. Are you still continuing to spend more money on entertainment? Cut down your expenses. Cut your expenses in line with the current reality. I have not seen any MFI that the budget that they came into 2020 in Africa is the same budget they are running. This budget has lost its steam with the first contact with reality in February. when we enter the boat of COVID-19. Formulate fresh resource turnaround plan. You need to ask yourself, how do I survive this year? And that is why some people are saying the moment your institution can survive this year, you have already made profit. So forget about your development plan. Forget about your strategic plan. Formulate fresh resource turnaround plan. Implement the plan with your stakeholders. You cannot leave them behind. Your stakeholders are the people funding you. They are the people who have interest in you, your staff, your client. Get everybody on board. Tell them that, yes, this is what we are doing. The worst thing that can happen to any MFI is not to have any plan. Motivate your funders and managers. Encourage them. And when you encourage them, move quickly to level 7, where you improve and install financial control. You can see the relationship between our level 1 and level 7. Evaluate your situation and install financial control. Then communicate and establish credibility with stakeholders. If they don't trust you, you have already lost out. And how will they trust you? You must communicate. You must carry them along. And finally, monitor and control and revise the change strategy that you have put in place. If you are able to put all this one in place, it will help you. And on the final note, MFI must have capacity necessary to develop and implement risk management strategies and disaster recovery. You cannot pretend that it cannot happen to you. It has happened to all of us. We are already in it. We are not just in isolation center. Everybody is afraid. Then MFI must ensure lending practices remain robust at all times that will make them to survive. Don't shut down lending. Don't pretend that, oh, because some people are not repaying, you will not lend. Lend. This is where many opportunities are coming up. Many businesses are coming up. Delivery system is improving because the clients are no longer on the street. They are at home. MFI must ensure that products and services are designed not only to sustain business working capital requirement, but also to support clients to build assets and reduce their vulnerability. And the ITCILO is already working with MFI in Sierra Leone and Nigeria to learn new product development strategy post-COVID-19. When you are talking to your funders, when you are talking to your partners, don't ask them only for money. Sometimes ask them for capacity. Let them open your windows to possibilities that can help you to be able to assess new opportunities, that will help you to be able to see new ways of doing things. This is the time for you to develop new products post-COVID-19, and it will help you to be able to do better. I will stop there for now, and I return to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Steve. That is a very in-depth analysis of some of, and it has addressed quite a number of the questions that had been raised. And I'm noticing that there are very many questions in terms of balancing between the social aspect and even the profit aspect of MFIs. And I want to come back to Kadry as I invite him to address this issue. Everybody, there is Benjamin who is asking, how do I balance between the profit aspect and the social aspect during these COVID times? Kadry, as you address that, you can also make some comments.
Thank you so much. I'll do my best. And after the answer that Dr. Steve gave us, it's really difficult to compete. That was impressive, Dr. Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before I go there, I want to flag a few things that Dr. Steve mentioned, just for everybody to appreciate. Having accurate financial set of financial information, audited financial statements that follow accounting standards will ensure that you comply with regulators. And in order to access resources, you really have to comply with regulators. In order to attract investors, you have to have a transparent representation of your status. And this can't be done without accurate financial reports and audited financial reports. Dr. Steve mentioned an important aspect, actually, tell yourself the truth. I mean, I'll borrow this statement. There are lots of ways in presenting the information in a way that make the situation look better. And actually, it's our job is to tell the truth. Actually, we have what we teach in the class is how to analyze and how to present the information in a way that give you the facts outright, like in the front, so you don't fool yourself. As Dr. Steve said, tell yourself the truth. That is so critical. Now, I'll go to the question or the comment that some of participants mentioned about the managing the social aspect and financial aspect. And I don't think there is I would say a cookie cutter answer, or there is ideal answer for this. There is lots of ethics. There is lots of I would say management insights necessary in order to make this balance. Our job is to analyze and give management facts so that management can balance the line, or make sure that they don't dip into too much profit or too little profit, like or too much social, and then the organization collapse. By giving management the right sets of information in the right time, we are hoping that they will be able to make decisions that make sure that the organization is efficient. So when we help people, we are giving them affordable services. When we select the clients, or when we join certain activities with clients, we are making it with the right mind or the right investment in mind, so that we don't collapse. We don't, I would say, we don't set them up for failure and fail with them. A concept that we're going to introduce in SAM 2020, which is probably new to microfinance institutions. It's not new to the business sector, though. For the last 15 years or so, a concept called a balanced scorecard evolved in the industry, in the business. Now more and more NGOs and microfinance institutions started to adapt to this, and we're going to have, I would say, a good discussion about this concept in the class of SAM 2020 in few weeks or couple of months. The idea basically is to give management scorecard that's balanced between the social aspect or the developmental aspects of the organization and the financial side. So instead of focusing entirely on balance sheet, income statement, portfolio report, and key performance indicators and ratios and this stuff, this is one element. The other elements that we look at is customer's perspective. So we're putting together some indicators that give management insights about the customers and how they are doing in their industry, again, to make informed decisions. Another aspect is the internal business processes, which looks at the way we conduct the business, and with the intention of making our approach or our internal processes more efficient and more effective. There are a few indicators that we're going to discuss about this. The other piece is the innovation and learning and growth. We shouldn't forget, or we shouldn't be buried in the day-to-day crisis, and this loan is not performing, or this area is whatever, and this branch is whatever. The idea of the balanced scorecard in this section is to look at our, I would say, intentional efforts to innovate and learn and grow. Again, I mean, all those can be modified differently depending on the country, depending on the organization, depending on what we are teaching in some classes, the concepts, so that people understand where it's coming from and why we are doing it, so that when they go back to their countries or to their institutions, they can, I would say, capsulize these ideas into actions and come up with what works best for their organization. Thank you so much. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Kadry. Those are very good insights, because as we are looking at all this, I can see questions are still coming up. I can see very many comments. I want, first of all, to just send one question to Lucy. Then I'll come to, I know for Dr. Steve, there are a number of questions, but Lucy, there's a question that I now can't trace who had asked it, but I harvested it. And they were asking, there are SMEs that failed, but now they have come back, and in the rural areas, they would want to get into agriculture. Is that an area that MFIs can support?
A very good question, Rosemary. I may not say yes or no, but we do know that microfinance are institutions for providing financial services to customers who meet the requirements. So I think what I had alluded to before, there needs to be a lot of consultation between the customer and the financial institution. And if I was a microfinance institution in such an area, I would like to connect with such an SME understand what is on offer, check through the risks that each are meeting because it's a mutual process. If they do business and succeed, then also my loan would be provided well. And also make sure that you can look at your product profiling. If you have the products that will meet their needs on the shelf, then you can go right away. Maybe some of the areas they could mitigate on the risks, like I said, is clear market linkages, ensuring that the business is viable, and there are maybe even scheduled disbursements. With the technology today, it's possible that you can have very proper supervision of the SME as you go along funding. You can approve a certain amount, but also disburse based on the needs, maybe on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis, on a task aspect basis. So I would say that, yes, I would say it's a relationship. And like, I would encourage the microfinance institutions to not shy of, like Dr. Steve has said, maybe this is the time to take the risks. Maybe this is the time to make sure that the business continues to go on. But the underlying factors of microfinance will remain to be observed. The issues of making sure that you don't expose the organization at risk, you do not do careless lending, and making sure that you help the customer to analyze their business so that they're also getting into a business that you can viably see that it is going to be able to meet the demands that will be put on the institution. I'll stop it at that, Rosemary.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I think the issue of resources is becoming a very interesting issue, and there are quite a number of people who are asking questions around that. And as Dr. Steve mentioned, it's because resources are always scarce. And I think economists continue telling us resources are scarce at all one time. There are few resources and there are many competing activities, all of them competing for those few resources. And as you address the issue of resources, Dr. Steve, I would also want you to focus on, can an MFI choose not to look for fresh funds and just focus on collecting the loans and looking internally instead of looking outside for resources? So over to you, Dr. Steve. You have created a lot of interest, and I think that is one of the areas that people are really stressed about.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. It's actually a difficult question, and then we need to be focused. Like Kadry has pointed out, we need to put our house in order. MFIs must take difficult decisions now. And what are these difficult decisions? Before you start looking for funds, you must be able to tell yourself the truth, and then you may need to suspend repayments, especially where we have complete lockdown. Our colleagues from South Africa who are in this session will tell you that the country is already thinking of second lockdown. If there is second lockdown, the businesses will shut down. You can see the crisis evolving. Then you need to restructure existing loans and provide liquidity support to these customers. The customers must survive before they can repay your loan. You need to support them. Then the option of looking for additional resources, there is no substitute. But again, it is not every meal that is presented to you that you will eat when you are hungry. Look for the one that will do your body good. So it is not every fund. I will not say because I'm an MFI, I'm looking for money, I'm desperate for money, I will go and take a loan at an interest rate that is beyond what I can sell the money. There's a risk that some government may make some hard decisions for lenders by imposing payment holidays without carefully considering the impact on the lenders. It has happened in Uganda. Our colleague in Uganda is in this class. It is happening in Nigeria. The president announced that all targeted intervention funds should have a suspended repayment. And the second day, clients are sending emails to the bank. The president said we should not pay. When I work in Morocco, during the Arab Spring, we discovered that the king was kind enough to write off the debt of some of the poor people so that there will be no Arab Spring in Morocco. What was the implication? They were happy. The king was good. The second day, they went back to the bank and they started borrowing again. And they said the king will write it off. So our regulators in the house, especially the directors that we have here now from the central bankers, you need to be very careful. Support the institution to be able to help the clients. Be careful in direct release of money to the clients. These guys will go back to debt and borrow again, and then they now distort the financial market. One way of making sure that these social investors we have talked about are able to support the MFIs to survive is that, number one, there's no MFI that is too big to fail. They need the right combination of leadership. If one of the largest institutions with hundreds of thousands of clients and millions can fail, it's going to distort the financial market. So it is in the self-interest of the regulator to support the MFI so that they don't fail. Then if a large or mid-sized MFI should fail, it's going to create problems for other practitioners in the sector. And then we must be able to continuously look what impact do we want to make. The regulator has nothing to regulate if there is no institution. It is your responsibility to ensure that this institution survives. Again, it is the responsibility of our government to make sure they support the institution. One, to be able to create employment. MFIs will lay off their staff if there is no job for them. And if the clients are not repaying the loan, then the institution cannot survive. We say the customer is king, but it's only in an existing kingdom. The kingdom must first survive, and the MFI is the kingdom where the customer is the king. There's a need for us to critically look at this. Then for the social investors, this is the time for you to write off the debt that the MFIs are owing so that they can continue to be in business and come back to borrow from you. Then for the commercial investors, this is the time to freeze the interest and then suspend repayment, because these institutions must be able to come back. And to our practitioners, the MFI, as we are getting this general support from government, there is no government in Africa that has serious aviation industry that has not supported them. We saw what is happening in Rwanda. We saw what is happening. Kenya is debating now. South Africa is already talking of about $2-4 billion to support South African Airways. If they can support, look at the number of people working in the airline and look at the number of people working in the microfinance sector. We need to support the microfinance sector so that they can affect the poor people. And when you look at the aviation, you look at the hospitality industry, those are elitist. It may be a very selfish argument, but this is the people we need to support. The poor people are the clients of microfinance. Any support for microfinance institution by our regulators will really affect more people. And that is why we need to commend the Central Bank of Nigeria for the good job they are doing with the Anchor Borrower Program, with the good job they are doing in suspending the recapitalization of microfinance institutions in Nigeria, and in making sure that there's targeted credit facility. But our membership association, like SLAMFI of Sierra Leone, HAMFI of Nigeria, will need to come together so that we now present a comfortable frontier to negotiate with our government. You need to tell them what is the public service obligation that MFIs are rendering to this economy. And it is on the basis of that government will talk to you. Aviation practitioners have come together. Hospitality industry, they have come together. School proprietors have come together, all because they want to get palliative and negotiate with government. Why can't MFIs come together and say, government, this is our situation. We are sitting down here. It is your responsibility to police our health. You didn't do it. COVID has come to meet us. You have to do something for us so that our institutions should not die. We should not just consider our individual health. Let us consider the health of our institution. Thank you very much, Rosemary.
Thank you, Dr. Steve. We are in the last 9 minutes.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that. It has been a fantastic discussion. We have addressed quite a number of questions. But before we get into the last bit, there are questions that are coming up, and there are still opportunities that we are discussing. There are many areas that we have dwelt on. And I want to come back to Kadry and ask him, considering all these challenges and even the opportunities that are facing the MFI industry, what can we do differently to ride this challenge safely to the other end?
Yeah, I think there are lots of valuable lessons that we can get from what Dr. Steve said about how we connect with the clients during this period, and from what Lucy said about the agriculture sector and the importance of investing or focusing on this sector, because people are gonna eat and they need the food to eat, and farmers need support. So there are lots of lessons that were discussed today already. Now, I take this to a narrow length of the area of my expertise, which is the financial side. And I would say there is the level of tolerance or the cushion that we have is shrinking fast. And so we don't have lots of space to wiggle. So we have to aspire at this stage to highest levels of efficiencies. There is no room to maneuver now. I mean, we have to be very careful in how we are investing our resources. We have to be very careful on how we are applying technology. Are we maximizing the use of technology in order to improve the efficiency of our processes? And in other webinar, we spoke about the technology and the potential of the technology for microfinance institutions, which is something that we're gonna discuss in SAM 2020 as well, because there is lots of potential there. The other thing is, as Dr. Steve said, we need to look inside. There is lots of wealth exists already in our financial statements that we can discover through analyzing our financial statements. So instead of borrowing, maybe we can mobilize the savings that we have or utilize the savings that we have. And instead of having heavy fixed assets base, maybe this can be utilized in an active portfolio. If the portfolio, if there is money sitting in the bank, instead of borrowing, like even before COVID, the case studies that we're studying in SAM classes, we're looking at these things and say, okay, was it the right decision for this microfinance institution to borrow money, or they could have used what they have to some extent in order to have a better return on the investment and whatsoever. My conclusion is, considering the COVID, our margin of error is very limited. We have to be extra savvy and use the technology and use the tools that we have and the knowledge that we learned over the years in order to weather this storm. And I would say, and keep it up. Like after COVID, I mean, we shouldn't go back to the loose kind of mentality. I mean, this is an opportunity that we are pushing the envelope, and let us keep it up, because this is where we should be. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. We are reaching a level where we have to start concluding because time is not on our side. I want to thank all the people who have participated. And one of the things that I noticed is that there are still a number of questions which we haven't responded to. We are going to respond to them in writing using your contacts that you have already used as you registered for this webinar. But before then, I want to give our panelists a chance to make the closing remarks so that we do not also extend our time beyond what we have promised. And I want to start with Lucy. What would you want to tell the participants before we close?
First of all, I want to thank them for signing in and listening to us. We appreciate that. I would also want to encourage especially the practitioners, the microfinance practitioners, that they shouldn't throw in the towel, the opportunities, let them connect with their customers, consolidate their efforts, and seize new opportunities so that then they can get into the agricultural space, because it's a new space and there are great opportunities. Thank you, Rosemary, and the other panelists. Good afternoon and good evening.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I want also to give Kadry a chance to give us the last words of wisdom, because I know he has said quite a number of things and we would want to hear from him right now. Thank you, Kadry.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I'm not sure what to say really. One, COVID is here to stay. COVID is not the first or the last crisis that we're gonna face. It's pushing us to improve our level of professionalism or improve our efficiency and effectiveness. I would say it is a motivation for us to step up our performance and keep it up there. Microfinance institutions are challenged in good days. Now it is more challenged, and we have to rise to this task and again, keep it up, because our clients shouldn't expect less than a superior performance from the microfinance institutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kadry. It's one of those things that I guess in history we'll be knowing that we participated in an era that we never even knew would happen. And before, I want to give Dr. Steve an opportunity to make his closing remarks and also to make the announcements so that by the time we finish, we have all this information. Dr. Steve.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. My final word is that if microfinance sector is going to survive this pandemic, we need to treat COVID-19 as the fundamental threat to the industry. We need to treat every part of the sector. We need to look at them and start mobilizing around easing the terms of debt that the borrowers cannot service when the economy seizes up. Then keeping the MFI solvent, and then identifying our partners. If during the crisis is when you are picking your partners, you have already lost out. When there is no crisis, pick your partners. And I will give you just two examples. HADA of Luxembourg has raised €1 million to help partners in Africa to overcome COVID. Are you a partner of HADA before the crisis? HADA of France again have raised another €2 million to be able to support their partners across the world. Who are your partners? What are you putting on the table for your partners? And then we need to be able to engage ourselves. And everything boils down to how transparent are you? What is your reporting? What product did you put on the table? And when they give you the money, where do you want to deploy it? Thank you very much. The only announcement I have is again to share with you our flyer for SAM 2020 as we are preparing for the conference. Everybody, the handle has been given where you need to just register and prepare yourself for it. It's coming on the 8th, between 8th and 10th of September. We are going to have 2 days of plenary, 1 day of master classes. The conference fee is just $200, and for those who are attending the master class, $100 only, and the class is almost full. And when you attend the master class, you get your certificate for attending the master class. We thank you so much for participating, and we look forward to welcoming you to some online classes. And for 15 years, we have been meeting in Mombasa every year. And now COVID has presented a restriction on us. We are not going to Mombasa, but one day we will go back to Mombasa to meet. But here online, we are not breaking the SAM annual conference. And this is what we are doing this September. Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for participating in this webinar. We hope to see you on 8th of September, and thank you very much because it's been great. We will answer all your questions. We are going to send a response to all your questions. So don't worry, even when we haven't tackled your question, we will send you a write-up because through the number that you gave us when you registered. So thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. All the best.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you. Bye.